From 1958, that was Jerry Lee Lewis with the theme song to the film High School Confidential, a 50s juvenile delinquent classic starring screen bombshell Mamie Van Doren, who cemented her legendary and enduring status in films like High School Confidential, Girls Town, Untamed Youth, Teacher's Pet, and more than 35 other films released between 1951 and 1975. And tonight we're honored to have Miss Van Doren with us to talk about not only her storied film career, but also the social ramifications of the music so often featured in her movies, and also some new and future projects on the horizon. And my first question for you, Miss Van Doren, is you were initially publicized as Universal Studios' answer to Marilyn Monroe, but your screen personas couldn't have been more different.
Well, not only the screen persona, but in real life, I never went down that road. I never wanted to be like Marilyn. I came from a different kind of background that she did, coming from the Midwest, and Marilyn just sort of, she was a lot different than I was. I knew her quite well, and I knew that something was going to happen if she didn't straighten out, and something did, but
True.
She kind of made it the way she wanted it. When people do drugs, they're going to have to pay for it.
That's true. Now, you had started, you were discovered by Howard Hughes, is that correct?
Yes. Howard saw me in a beauty contest. I don't know whether he was in the room at the time in the contest. I became Miss Palm Springs, and I got a call from RKO saying that he'd seen me, and he was kind of a recluse, but yet once in a while he'd pop in and out places you wouldn't know where he was. And he saw me, and then he wanted to meet me, and I met him, and he put me in four movies at RKO, but they were very small. But I had a long run on one movie, on His Kind of Woman with Jane Russell and Bob Mitchum. I must have been on that for 3 months. Working on that one, and the pay was real good because I was screen actors, and I learned a lot. I absorbed everything I could because I wanted to make that my craft. I wanted to be an actress very much, and singing came so natural for me. And Jane sang in that song in that movie too, so it was a learning experience. And Howard did help me, and he was a very smart man and very controlled, and you learn a lot from your peers,
Do you think that maybe he was thinking of you in terms of another Jane Russell? Because he discovered Jane, probably 15 years prior to that with The Outlaw.
Well, I don't think so. We went to some of the not rushes, at night he'd always go into RKO, and we'd watch, sit in the rushes, and we'd watch Hell's Angels with Jean Harlow, and I think he sort of thought of me as I was a real platinum blonde then,
Mm-hmm.
I know he introduced me to Gloria Swanson. I don't know whether she had done Sunset Boulevard. I don't remember the year. It was in the late 40s or the early 50s, and Howard wanted me to go to the TWA at the Inglewood Airport at that time, and in L.A., and he wanted me to present her with some flowers or something. So she came out, and I presented her some roses, but he wanted me to wear a bikini, and so I wore a bikini. In those days, it was unheard of. I think she had a fit about that one. She was really a fun gal. She says, "Is that your real color hair?" She was very outspoken, and of course she had to do what she was told. When Howard asked her to do something, she did it.
Now you also went on to work at Universal, and you did a few pictures with Tony Curtis.
Yes, I did my very first one called Forbidden. I was a singer in that, and it was the location was Macayo, and it was a very beautiful set, and I sang You Belong to Me. That wasn't my voice, though, because it had already been pre-recorded, and then I went over and met the producer and director, and they said, "I've got the job, but you have to be ready Monday," and that was on a Friday. I had to learn the song, perfect match to the mouthing of the singer, and the movements and walking and gowns and I bit my nails down. They had to put false nails on me, and I got there early in the morning, and I just sat there, and they did my face, my hair, my nails, everything, and they got a white satin dress. I remember, I think it was from Paramount or for MGM, and they said that was one that Harlow had tried on or had worn in some time. And I was wearing Joan Crawford's pumps from Warner Brothers, and they were and I took a size 6, and she took a size 6.5, and they were really too big for me, but they were those real ankle strap type of shoes, and I wore those. And I was so nervous I couldn't get my lashes on my eyes. I was, blinking too much. I was a nervous wreck. Well, that really got me my contract to Universal. It served as a screen test. And then, of course, Tony Curtis was in it, and then the next movie I did was opposite Tony Curtis. I tested for it opposite 2 other girls, and I got the role.
What was it like working with him at that time? Because he was a big screen heartthrob at that time.
Oh, honey, he was a real hunk. He was a hunk till the day he died. He was so cute and so sexy. And it was a football picture called The All American.
Sure.
And we had a lot of All Americans from SC, and we had Frank Gifford in the movie, and Jimmy Sears was All American, and we had a lot of real football players. And then they were shot a lot of the scenes in the Rose Bowl, and Jeff Hibbs, who was the director, was also an All-American football player, and Aaron Rosenberg, who produced the movie, was also an All-American. So it was a real original type of kind of movie. So I sort of just fit in with that. I went down at the Rose Bowl where they were shooting it, and they all lifted me above their heads, all these guys. It was a lot of fun.
Now, you had mentioned as before that you had sung in these movies. Who came up with the idea to put you in these rock and roll movies, where you were kind of switching off and singing rock and roll? Prior to that, you were singing essentially standards in films. How did that come along? Well,
that's when it all happened. Rock and roll just started then. Before that, there wasn't any rock and roll.
Right.
It was just boogie woogie and stuff. And I remember I was married to an orchestra leader named Ray Anthony, who was one of the top big sellers at Capitol Records. He'd sold more records that time than Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra put together. He was very popular, and the very thing that I was doing was putting him out of business, because the orchestras were just, it was hard for him to get booked where he wanted to get booked. It wouldn't pay to go out and on the road. That whole era was over. And when Warner Brothers, I just had my son. We had a child together. I just had Perry, and it was right after that Howard Koch and Joe Skank at Warner Brothers. They were indies. They were independent producers,
mm-hmm.
and that was the beginning of the independent producers. And they'd go to the studio, and then they would release it through Warner Brothers. And then I went to Warner Brothers, did couple movies for them. It was right after I had the baby, and they gave me a script called Untamed Youth, and it came from a little book, and a novel, I guess. I read it, and I had the lead in it, and I liked it. And then he says, I want you to do some songs. And so I got the songs, and he brought Eddie Cochran,
mm-hmm.
and Buddy Holly came over to the house, and we went over the songs. They just got back from a tour together or something, and Buddy came up to the house with him, and we went through the songs. And he was from the South, and
sure.
I think he's from Memphis or someplace, or Nashville. And I heard the songs, and I thought, oh man, these are dynamite, So Howard, the producer and the director, were there, and he says, "Can you do these songs?" And I says, "Oh my God, it's like I was just born to do them, And Eddie was very pleased that I was able to sing all of his songs. And then also Les Baxter was instrumental in doing some of them too. He did Go Go Calypso, which was the last song in the movie, and but Eddie was his instrument in helping me do some of the rock sounds, and kind of steering me in the right way. He came over to the house and we worked together.
And you were with what essentially was rock royalty, what was to become, legendary performers, Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, that's, the best of the best.
Yeah, and I dated Elvis Presley.
And I was going to get into that. Yeah, Elvis Presley as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he came to see me in Las Vegas, and that's my first appearance on in Vegas was at the Riviera Hotel, and it was in October of '57. And I was appearing there, I was starring there. I was scared to death, and he came to see me, and we went out afterwards, and we went around and saw Louis Prima and Keeley at Sahara, and we went, we just kind of toured around, because he had played there at the Frontier earlier, and I guess he kind of bombed it. It wasn't really a big success.
Right.
But he loved Las Vegas, and I was married at the time, and so I shouldn't have done that.
Well, it was Elvis. I mean,
it comes around once,
Sure. From all accounts, I mean, everybody that I've read about or have spoken to who've met him say he was just the nicest guy. Elvis.
Elvis? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was very sweet and kind of naive. He'd seen my movie, and he loved Tony Curtis. I think he said that Tony was his favorite actor, and he copied his hair and everything after Tony. And when I saw him and met him, and when I was really close to him, I noticed he dyed his hair black, because he was kind of sandy brown when in the movie he just done Love Me Tender, and incidentally, when we were out, he sang that song to me. So,
well, that's quite a night.
He had dyed black hair, and then he had mascara on. I remember that, and I thought that was so weird. He was wearing mascara.
That was a record released in 1957 by our guest this evening, Mamie Van Doren, with Oobala Baby, as heard in the film Untamed Youth. And that was also a song co-written by Eddie Cochran. And then before that, we heard Elvis Presley with Baby Let's Play House. Miss Van Doren, your films have certainly stood the test of time and are probably more well-known today than many other films made around the same time.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. My movies did quite well when they came out. I mean, I was always top billed because I was starring, and
Sure.
that was unheard of for a woman to star in a movie, and then the man's name was beneath me. I mean, when Marilyn did it, she always had to have somebody on top of her.
Right.
I mean, expression.
Yeah, right.
But when I left the studio, it was always it starred me all the time. And then, of course, I got lucky, and I worked with Clark Gable, in Teacher's Pet.
I wanted to ask you about that film because I'd heard rumors that, and this I should tell the audience, is a film with Clark Gable and Doris Day and you. And I had heard that Doris Day, for whatever reason, felt threatened by you and ordered a lot of your scenes cut from the film.
I think Doris was in it, and I don't think she was very... I mean... This is like my feeling about what happened. But I'll never know because I wasn't there when it happened.
Right.
So.
Well, I wanted to ask you about High School Confidential. You played opposite Russ Tamblyn, and your character was probably it was certainly the most bizarre relationship on screen I'd seen between what was supposed to be his aunt.
Yeah, I was his Auntie Gwen. I think that was my name. And I just got back from Rome, Italy. I was doing a movie over there. And I just separated from Ray before I went over there. My husband, we were just separated. And when I got back, L. Zugsmith, who produced it, he was way ahead of his time. What a wonderful producer. What a wonderful man he was and a human being. He called me and said, Mamie, would you please do this role? He says, I've already got the movie cast. He says, since you're back, he says, you'd have to be working in the next few days. And he says, I've written a special role for you in there just so you can be in it. And I said, well, what kind of a role? And he said, well, I'll send the script. He sent it over, and I says, oh, I'm Russ Tamlin's aunt.